All right, this is segment 2. Friday, September 13th. Is that right? It's Friday? Wow, Friday the 13th. Is that right? Yeah, that's what it says. I thought the 13th was yesterday. All right, I'm reading in Hebrews. Chapter 11. By faith, Noah, being warned of God of things not seen as yet. By faith now, we just read about by faith. By faith, Enoch was translated that he should not see death. He had the faith. What is faith? Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. For by it the elders, all the old people, obtained a good report. That's another thing I should talk about. I'm getting to be an old guy now. Look at my face. I just go a few weeks and look at how the hair grows. All my head was shaved off smooth right down to the skin. In a little over a month, I look like Jeremiah Johnson here. Grizzly Adams. What I'm getting at is I'm getting older. And I'm happy with that. Why? Because I'm reading about what God says about old people. If they do it right, in the end, you realize the reward that God is talking about. My wife already made that journey. She died last year. Let's see, I'm in 19. Yeah, she died in 2018 in March. I talked about her before, and I said the wrong date because I was confused. It was March 21, 2018. That's when she died. About a year and a half ago or so. She already made this transition. Verse 7, chapter 11 in Hebrews. By faith, Noah, being warned of God of things not seen as yet, moved with fear, prepared an ark to the saving of his house, by the which he condemned the world, and became heir of the righteousness which is by faith. Noah, because he obeyed God, did what he was commanded. He condemned the rest of the worldly society, which was evil. It all perished in the flood. By faith, Abraham, when he was called to go out into a place which he should after receive for an inheritance, obeyed. And he went out, not knowing whither he went. God said, go, and Abraham went. God spoke to Abraham. Abraham believed God. Abraham asked of God different things because he was first a believer in God. God says you really got to believe that I am listening to you and that I am a rewarder of all those who diligently seek me. By faith he sojourned in the land of promise, as in a strange country, dwelling in tabernacles with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. You got to read the Old Testament to find out about all this stuff. Here it is rewritten in the New Testament. For he looked for a city which hath foundations, whose builder and maker is God. Through faith also Sarah herself received strength to conceive seed, and was delivered of a child when she was past age, because she judged him faithful who had promised. Read about the story of Abraham and Sarah. Therefore sprang there even of one, and him as good as dead. These were two old codgers when they had their son. Therefore sprang there even of one, and him as good as dead. We're talking about Abraham. So many as the stars of the sky in multitude, and as the sand which is by the seashore, innumerable. We're still having offspring of Abraham. These all died in faith. Did you hear that? We just read about some prominent people recorded in the Bible. Nowhere does it say, according to these people that died, that God said they died, these all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, and were persuaded of them, and embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. Verse 13, the first three words in that verse. These all died. They all died. In faith, not having received the promises. You got to read the Old Testament to find out what they're talking about here. My issue on this particular verse here is that they died. I just heard President Trump give a speech on the 11th. Yeah, I guess that was Wednesday. You know, that Twin Towers speech about all the people that died. I heard him say to some people that such and such is up in heaven now, looking down on you. That's not what it says in Scripture. That's why I say I believe President Trump is being used by God, but he's not a godly man. He does not know Scripture. No man who has died here on earth is up there right now looking down on his family. God won't subject anybody to that. Look at the evil that's happening here on earth. You think everybody that dies goes up there and they're looking down on this crap? It does not say that anywhere in the book. It says the exact opposite. It says that does not happen. They go into the grave. The part that returns unto God who gave it is the life that's in you. God says, the soul that sinneth, it shall die. These people, even Trump I dare say, is saying the soul went up to be with God. That's not true. The soul that sinneth, it shall die, is recorded in the Word. What is the soul? God formed man of the dust of the earth, and God breathed into man the breath of life, and man became a living soul. This is the soul. This is what dies. That life that's inside is God. Know ye not that your body is the temple of the living God? That's where that life is. The life that you have it's not your own. You don't sustain yourself. God does. It's by God's grace that you continue to live. But he also records in here that the wages of sin is death. And sin was declared back in the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve, they ate from the tree that they were commanded not to eat from. And that's when death entered into society. And it's still here today. The part that returns to God is the life that's in you, because that part cannot die. All life is God. Okay? It's God inside that old man's face right there. When my wife died, I watched the change come over that face. I watched as that spirit, that life, left my wife's body and returned to God. He's the one that put that life in there. When the man plants the seed, the sperm, into the egg in a woman, it begins to form a baby. Before the sperm and the egg came together, like that, they both were alive. There was life there. I mean, here in America, our Supreme Court says, yeah, you can kill the baby. That ain't alive yet. That's not a baby. That's not a human being. Oh, yes, it is. And you are going to answer to God. I better stop talking about that right now, because that's a real sore subject with me. Verse 14, Hebrews 11. For they that say such things declare plainly that they seek a country. And truly, if they had been mindful of that country from whence they came out, they might have opportunity to have returned. Once you get saved and begin on that journey, that pathway to everlasting life, God does not want you to return to that old lifestyle. That's paraphrasing what was said right there. But now they desire a better country. Keep walking forward. That is, in heavenly. Wherefore God is not ashamed to be called their God. I worship the one true God, Adonai. Oh, there's a bunch of names. I got them all written in this book here too. I'm not going to go over them. Jesus is God. But now they desire a better country, that is, an heavenly. Wherefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he hath prepared for them a city. That's where the journey ends, with God. That's worth the walk, believe me, folks. I'm on that path. I'm on that journey right now. And I'm getting older every day. That means I'm getting closer to it. By faith, Abraham, when he was tried, offered up Isaac. You got to read the Old Testament, what God told him to do, and he obeyed. And he that received the promises offered up his only begotten Son, of whom it was said, that in Isaac shall thy seed be called, according that God was able to raise him up even from the dead, from whence also he received him in a figure. A little bit of a tongue twister there, but it is understandable, especially if you read the Old Testament maybe 20 times. Slowly. Don't zoom right through it. Stick it up into your brain, but do it slowly. Matter of fact, repeat reading. I do. By faith, Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau concerning things to come. By faith, Jacob, when he was a-dying, blessed both the sons of Joseph and worshipped, leaning upon the top of his staff. You got to read these stories. It's fantastic. By faith, Joseph, when he died, made mention of the departing of the children of Israel and gave commandment concerning his bones. Do you know anything about that? You got to read the whole book. I don't have time to do it right now. I'm just going to do a few of these tonight. By faith, Moses, when he was born, was hid 3 months of his parents. Pharaoh was killing people back in them days because they saw he was a proper child, and they were not afraid of the king's commandment. By faith, Moses, when he was come to years, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season. Don't do what's wrong. Talking about a lot of different stuff here, but some things in particular. You get that momentary satisfaction and thrill, and it'll lead you right into the paths of death. I'm going to read verse 25 again. Choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God, this is Moses, than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season. Esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt, for he had respect unto the recompense of the reward. Took me a while to figure all them words out, but I did. By faith he forsook Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king, for he endured, and seeing him who is invisible, that's God. Through faith he kept the Passover and the sprinkling of blood, lest he that destroyed the firstborn should touch them. You got to read the Old Testament. By faith they passed through the Red Sea as by dry land, which the Egyptians, assaying to do, were drowned. By faith the walls of Jericho fell down, after they were compassed about 7 days. You got to read that story. By faith the harlot Rahab perished not with them that believed not, when she had received the spies with peace. All of these different stories, you got to stick it all in your head. And as you read through this book like I'm doing right now, God brings it to your remembrance and explains the whole thing. I got to stop this right now. This is segment number 2, Friday the 13th. I'll be right back.